What's up my friends, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to show you how to make a riff on one of my favorite cocktail, the Black Manhattan. We're gonna make it using an Amaro made completely from scratch, which I believe is pretty exciting because 1, we've never made any Amaro before on the channel, 2, I believe the recipe is really good, and 3, I believe this is going to open a whole world of possibilities for you because you will be able to use this recipe as a template to create your own Amaro if that's something you're into. So without further ado, if you guys are ready, let's make some Amari. We're gonna make just one, so that's wrong. Let's make an Amaro. Let's go. Alright, so making your own Amaro, you will see, is really not that complicated, and that's mostly due to the fact that there's no real regulations in order to make an Amaro. By definition, Amari are macerations of herbs, spices, and botanicals in neutral spirits such as grain or grapes, but that's just usually, it doesn't have to be that. It's also bittersweet, and it's most of the time aged in order to meld the flavors together to make it more balanced. It was also traditionally meant to be drank after dinner, so as a digestif, so some of the botanicals involved in the making of your Amaro should be there to help digestion. Also, traditional Amari were made in Italy, and they were made with herbs, spices, and botanicals to highlight the terroir of the region where it was made. But those are just fundamental guidelines, and you can still play with them quite loosely if you have an idea in mind and still call your concoction an Amaro. Another reason why I believe Amari are quite easy to make is because they don't require fancy equipment to make them, and the list of ingredients can be quite short as well, so really it doesn't take a lot. Today we're gonna infuse it sous vide to speed the process, but you can use the exact same recipe and let it infuse at room temperature for a couple of weeks, and you're gonna get the exact same result. So all you need is a little bit of time. That's it. So the Amaro that we're gonna make today is to make a riff on the Black Manhattan, like I said, which is traditionally made with Averna. For me, Averna really tastes like toffee, caramelized sugar, cooked citrus, vanilla, pipe tobacco, stuff like that. But to make my cocktail today, I want to stay away from the caramelized flavors, and I want to go more on the chocolate side of the flavor spectrum. So we're gonna infuse our Amaro with chocolate and cherries, and we're gonna name our cocktail the Black Forest Manhattan in honor of the famous cake. So the first step to make this is going to be to cook our sugar in order to caramelize it. Caramelized sugar will help adding more depth to the Amaro. It's gonna be fantastic, but you don't want to overcook it because it's gonna develop too much bitterness. Also, when I make caramelized sugar, I always make a little bit more than what I will need because it gets sticky and you always lose a little bit in the process. So for our recipe today, we're gonna need 130 grams of caramelized sugar. So in my saucepan, I'm gonna add about 175 grams just to be sure. You're gonna add on top of it about 1 ounce of water, and you're gonna cook it over medium heat until it reaches 125 Celsius. So as soon as you reach that temperature, you're gonna remove it from heat and pour your sugar over a baking sheet covered with parchment paper. And be very careful because that mixture is extremely hot. Then you're simply gonna forget this on your countertop for a couple of minutes until the sugar completely hardens. So while this is happening, we're gonna start to prep our herbs, spices, and botanicals for the infusion. So first, in a sous-vide bag, we're gonna add 115 grams of fresh cherries without their pits, 15 grams of organic cacao nibs, 9 grams of rhubarb root, 0.5 grams of gentian root, 1.5 grams of licorice. Then using a mortar and pestle, you're gonna lightly crack 0.5 grams of pink peppercorn. Same with 0.5 grams of coriander seeds. Again, the same, lightly cracked 0.8 grams of cinnamon, 0.2 grams of star anise, and 0.1 gram of clove. Next, you're gonna add 0.2 grams of lightly cracked nutmeg and 0.3 grams of lightly cracked cardamom seeds. Not the pods, just the seeds. Now our sugar should be completely hardened, so using a muddler we're gonna smash it into pieces and we're gonna add 130 grams of it in our sous-vide bag. Next, we're gonna add 400 ml of vodka and 150 ml of Armagnac. This will help to mimic the aging notes that we often get in Amari, and it will help to make it smoother already, even if we don't let it age to meld the flavors. You can also use cognac if you want, but usually Armagnacs are much cheaper and they will get the job done perfectly. Then you're gonna seal your bag, removing as much air as possible without making a mess, and you're gonna cook it in your hot water bath for 2 hours at 64 Celsius. After 2 hours of cooking, you're gonna plunge it right away in an ice water bath until it reaches at least room temperature. Then for the filtration, I always like to use a nut milk bag. This makes already the first filtration pretty perfect, and it also allows me to squeeze it pretty hard to extract as much juice and flavors as possible. Then you're gonna measure your yield, and because the cherries for sure release some of their juice in the mixture, you should have more liquid than what you started with. Personally, my batch yielded about 650 ml, and in order to get the ABV that I want, which is about 27.5%, I'm gonna add water until I reach 800 ml. Then I like to filter it a second time through a coffee filter. It will take a little while, but be patient, it's worth it. And then all you have to do left is to bottle it. Like I said in the making of the recipe, I always like to use a little bit of aged brandy in my Amaro in order to mimic a little bit the aging notes that we often get in traditional Amari. This will help us to get close really fast to what traditional Amari tastes like, but if you want to take this up a notch and really make it fantastic, here's what I suggest. Split your batch in two, one bottle to use right away because it's already fantastic, but the second part, leave it resting at room temperature for about 1, maybe 2 months. This will allow the flavors to meld together, and you will see after this wait, your Amaro will be so much more complex and smoother. It makes an incredible difference. That being said, we're gonna leave that one do its thing, and we're gonna taste the fresh batch. Cheers. On the nose, you get intense sweet chocolate and spice notes, followed by complex botanical smell. On the palate, the first notes to come through are the cherries and the chocolate. The spices and the herbaceousness from the botanicals are playing really well together. The gentian and the rhubarb roots has just enough earthy and wood bitterness, perfect to balance the sweetness of the Amaro. For me, it's beautifully balanced and I love it. I think it makes a beautiful digestive or a not too sweet dessert drink, but now we should give it a try in the cocktail that brought us all here today, the Black Forest Manhattan. So in a mixing glass, we're gonna add 2 ounces or 60 ml of rye whiskey, 1 ounce or 30 ml of our Black Forest Amaro, and 2 dashes of Angostura bitters. And like I always say when using a small Japanese dasher bottle like this, double up the amount because they make smaller dashes. Now we're gonna add ice and stir. Strain it in our favorite cocktail coupe. For the garnish, of course, a cocktail cherry on a pick, and there you have it, my friends, the Black Forest Manhattan. Cheers. The Amaro adds just enough sweetness to kill the burn of the rye, but it's not too sweet. You get that beautiful and intense chocolate and cherry flavor up front, and now once mixed with the rye, chilled and slightly diluted, the rhubarb root from the Amaro really shines, and it's perfectly complementary to all the other flavors in the cocktail. I really love it. Also, before we go, I didn't mention it in the video, but quite a lot of you complained recently that I stopped putting the recipe in the descriptions of the videos, so it's gonna be back to answer the popular demand. Everything's gonna be there, the recipe for the Amaro, the cocktail, all the specs is gonna be in the description, but like always, it's also gonna be on Patreon with extra details and beautiful pictures, so if you want to support the channel furthermore, you know what to do. The link is gonna be also next to the recipe in the description below. So my friends, this is it for me today. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a thumbs up if you did. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel before we go, to turn that bell if you want to make sure not to miss the next one. And until then, thank you very much again. Have a great day and see you very soon. Cheers. That's yummy.